I think Hoylake has character in abundance, and I think it can be slightly overlooked by certain people who are looking for more obvious, instant, explosive land, which might not be on show immediately when you turn up at Hoylake. But I think over time, Hoylake will sit with you for a long, long time.
Joe, where are you coming to us from today?
I join you from a place called Oxton, which is not that far from Hoylake. It's about 3 or 4 miles down the road from Hoylake, so the Wirral Peninsula.
Ah, very nice. So you must have will you be attending this year? Big year in the Hoylake area.
Yes, I'm a lifelong member of Hoylake. I've been a member there for about 30 years, since I was a kid.
Ah, well, let's dig in on that. 30 years at Hoylake. Did you grow up in the area?
I did. I grew up and lived here until I was somewhere in my late 20s, and then moved down to London for work reasons. I was a professional musician for a long time, and things didn't quite pan out in that way. But then I got into the software industry a bit later than that, and then moved down to London with that, and then lived there for a long time. Met my wife, we had some kids, and then I say recently-ish, about 4 years ago, we moved back to the Wirral where we live now, and it's been a happy move home. And I now play a bit more golf than I used to.
Well, yeah, if you're at Hoylake, you certainly should. How far are you from the club?
Yeah, about 4 or 5 miles.
Ah, dude. So what's it like? So if you've been there for 30 years, a few opens have come through town. I guess the last one, Rory McIlroy, right? Mm-hmm. Very exciting. So and there's a lot of great golf in that area, a lot of great links golf. I think England, sort of, at least from an American point of view, when it comes to links golf, obviously people think of Scotland. People think of, obviously, with America's. In case you can't tell, Joe, I am of Irish descent. With your last name, I'm suspecting there might be a little bit of Celtic blood in yours. Yes, right? So with the American connection to Ireland, people go to Ireland as well. Not as many trips often unless folks are trying to cross off the open rota courses, off to England to play links golf in England. I did a story a few issues back about discovering heathland golf, which I absolutely fell in love with in England, and think, heathland golf has got it all going on, because you've got linksy conditions, right? You've got that sandy soil and that sort of rumpled, gnarly, wonderful linksy style of golf, but then you're not exposed to you're not necessarily in the ocean getting your butt kicked. You're not necessarily on the ocean at Hoylake either. There's a little bit of relief, but it's definitely a very windy experience for sure.
It can be. It's very exposed. Going back, where do we go? Okay, excuse me. So going back a few steps, what you were saying there, the area that I live in, yes, it certainly is an absolute gold mine of links golf. We are truly blessed. I think it's a shame, even though I'm victim of it, because I love the romance of the tall dunes of west of Ireland and Scotland. I love that sort of golf, that wild, unkempt. Well, not unkempt. Sorry, I shouldn't say that, but sort of wild and sort of random, bouncing golf. I love that. It speaks to me greatly, which is at odds with how I've grown up playing my golf at Hoylake, which is on a ostensibly fairly flat terrain,
right?
Albeit, a third of the course is on some wild terrain, which is in keeping with more of the Scottish and sort of west of Ireland surfaces that you're used to playing. So I hanker after that sort of golf. There's no doubt about it. But I think I would be remiss in not talking up Hoylake's character, idiosyncrasies, the stuff that it reveals over multiple plays. I'm not even talking like 10 plays, I'm talking 3. You play it 3 times with somebody who knows what they're talking about, who can talk you through some of the intricacies and point out some of the stuff you might miss by having missed a fairway right instead of playing down the centre, or whatever it might be. I think Hoylake has character in abundance, and I think it can be slightly overlooked by certain people who are looking for more obvious, instant, explosive land, which might not be on show immediately when you turn up at Hoylake, but I think over time Hoylake will sit with you for a long, long time. I think there's a lot to be said.
Very well said, and you're speaking, Joe, I have to admit, you're speaking right to me with that one. When I did a course called Scotland, I played the Open Rota, and Hoylake, to me, I just played it once. I was coming through quickly, and I did that with all the courses, and it was one that just on one pass, coming through on an afternoon, I found it didn't grab me the way that, say, again, having been raised on the, as you say, the more obviously dramatic. You don't have to go to be a sleuth or an expert, a golf architecture expert, to go to Ballybunion and stand on the 17th and go like, holy shit, like this is a cool golf hole. Like you don't have to be terribly sophisticated to get that. And I wouldn't consider myself the most sophisticated when it comes to rating and understanding golf courses. I would love to play Hoylake a few more times. So it would give it the chance to reveal those charms. I think it's the same with the old course too. I mean, if you want to talk about a flat golf course, I mean, yeah, that's about as flat. And honestly, until you get to like 16 and 17, kind of forgettable, unless you go around it a few times and you sort of say, okay. So, how does Hoylake reveal those charms over time?
I think it's really interesting. I don't want to go too far back into the sort of annals, because otherwise we'll be here all evening. But the beauty of Hoylake was that it started on relatively flat terrain because that was seen as a good thing. The more interesting, or what we consider more interesting, golf land was unusable at the time, without great expense and machinery they didn't have access to at the time to turn it into usable golf land. So the stuff that was usable was really on the flat. So that was able to be turned into a golf course relatively easily without huge amounts of investment, which at the time would have been extremely unwise, because the guy setting up the course in 1868, or just before it opened in 1869, the idea of pouring huge investment into creating landscape that was going to be usable for golf was a huge risk, massive. So it was a real chancer of an enterprise. And the original the guys who started the club will have seen this as can we get it going? It's a sport that was only just really taking hold in England as a thing, a real thing, and drumming up support and financial backing was not necessarily a certain thing at all. But Hoylake was a great success very quickly. Within 2 years, within a year and a half, they'd expanded to 12 holes. And then they'd made it 18. But the 18 were quite rudimentary. And the extension to the original 9 holes, which were laid out by Chambers and Morris, Tom Morris's older brother, they were great. And they avoided the existing race course and the various problems they had at the time. There was a huge rabbit warren on the site. So they were trying to avoid these sort of pockmarked areas where the rabbits or the scrapes were, and also where hoof prints would have been a problem. So in those days, they laid out 9 holes that did their best to avoid all the pitfalls and the problems they have with the land at the time. They didn't even think about going near to the dune land because it was just unusable. You couldn't play on it unless there was great expense and time spent trying to turn it into usable land for golf. So, over time they extended the course and they went down the spit of land, which now is occupied by roughly the 8th and 9th hole, the far hole and the punch bowl hole. And they had lots of holes down that stretch and very, very tightly crammed in. And it was also susceptible to flooding. They had a serious problem with rushes and things like that. And they did their best to turn what was really a 9-hole working course into an 18-hole course, because that made you apparently credible and more sort of taken seriously in the world of golf. And over time, they got better and better, and they rerouted the holes. They used the land more in a more sensible way. And by 1897, when that was the first Open held by Hoylake, by 1897, they'd got a really nice, coherent set of holes, really. They bought some new land. The boundaries were a little bit more fluid in the early days. And they'd acquired more land. They'd lost some land, but they'd acquired, better land, let's say. And they'd laid out a better 18-hole routing, which was ready for its first Open Championship. And from then on, we've seen the various phases, the fashions and everything that goes on. Harry Colt joined in 23 and was brought on as the first official paid architect in that sort of capacity as a paid architect. He came along in 23 and made some sizable changes to the course, not just the big ones like making a new 11th and 12th hole, but also just completely reconfigured the course. He built new bunkers, he reshaped bunkers. He was tasked with reshaping the greens, which used to be these huge Victorian rectangular, kind of croquet lawn style greens, into what we know today, more curved, sort of interesting, irregular shapes. And then from then on, the evolution has taken us through a couple of other architects. We've had Fred Hawtrey in the late 50s, early 60s, who rerouted a few holes and did various other things. And we've had his son Martin. We've had the Mackenzie and Ebert most recent changes. They've created this new hole. So the course has been through incredible change across the last 151, 152 years of its existence. And what we have today, I think, is a really exciting and incredibly a real grower. And it's sometimes it doesn't strike people on the first play, but I think they should play it again and again and grow to love the place.
I think so too. Wow, just hearing all that history. I plan on getting back soon, but maybe I feel like I need to get back sooner. What is it like?
Please play with me, Tom.
I trust me. We're gonna play some golf. And Colt,
Good.
yeah, it doesn't get any better, right? That was a big part of my tour, bouncing around to some Colt, St. George's Hill and Woodley, and gosh, doesn't get any better. And of course, the stuff that he did in America as well. So good. So what is it like as a member when the Open comes to town, when it comes to your golf course? What is that build up and that experience like?
Well, it's fun because I've been a member since 06. I was a member before that. I joined in 90. I think as a kid I was 92 or 93, and so I saw the 06 Open roll in, which was the first after many years. So it's very exciting. The club, everybody in the area got so thrilled by the prospect. It was a festival. The place exploded with excitement. The weather was so on our side, it's ridiculous. We do forget though that the first day's play was delayed because of a flash flood or a flash storm. So rain came in hard for about 2 hours in the morning on the Thursday in 06, and all the tee times were put back. It was amazing because it was so dry that the place just, all of the moisture disappeared in about 2 seconds and it was gone, and everybody was out on the tee and ready to play. And what we remember is this bone dry situation was actually started off as a complete flood and delayed tee times, which is crazy. But the place sits on 100 feet of sand. It's just an enormous sand site. So it drained and everybody was ready to play. The forecast was incredible. The whole 4 days was a beaming sunshine. The practice days, everything else, it was for us very hot. I know you guys in the States get some crazy temperatures, but for us in this little peninsula of the Northwest, for us to get sort of pushing 35, late 30s degrees heat was very hot, and the place went bone dry. We all know those pictures of Tiger plotting his way around. It was wonderful. It was a great week. Local businesses went bananas. People were, the beers and everything it was wonderful. The local establishments, which are 150 yards from the front entrance to the golf club, were doing great trade. Everything was happening. The place was brilliant. So I remember that well. I had a good friend from Australia who came over and was living in the area, and we'll never forget it. We meet up periodically, and it's always hot conversation talking about how great it was in 06. Also must remember that Tiger was, did what he does and he plotted his way around with his irons, but what we don't hear that much about is that Stevie Williams gave him a telling off the moment he took out his driver and did what he did on what is now 13, it was 14. He hooked one onto the adjacent fairway, and Steve Williams said, "Tiger." I think he politely told him off, and he said, "We've discussed this. You've got the driver yips. You've got the driver yips. We both know this. So not a lot of people talk about that form, but yeah, as far as I understand it, it wasn't just about Tiger being a genius. He was sort of forced into it because he wasn't hitting the driver very well. So anyway, yeah. So there we go. So Tiger did his thing, and it was incredible. I mean, just watching it unfold was just next level. The clubhouse was pumping. Everybody was in fantastic mood, and the vibe was brilliant. And then the follow-up in 14, sadly we didn't get the weather. 14 wasn't as good weather, but it caught the best player in the world in his ideal conditions. Landings were soft. He just plotted his way around with a driver rather than a 2-iron, and landed in all the right spots, did what he had to do, and Rory was just, he did what he did. Fantastic.
He did what he did.
And then where are we?
Where are we? Who do we now? So Tiger, that's a pretty good. I mean, Hoylake is identifying and rewarding some pretty great and historic names in golf. I imagine
it seems to be a trend, though.
Yeah.
It seems to be a trend.
So
We've
if you go back, who do you have before? I didn't review my Hoylake history going into this. So prior to
we have Hagen. We have obviously Jones in 30, which is massive.
Yes, right.
So on his way to his quadrilateral Grand Slam. And who do we have? Peter Thompson. We have John Ball, of course, who's home favourite, first amateur to win the Open Championship. And De Vicenzo, who was a massive favourite at the time. I don't think Roberto De Vicenzo gets enough airtime, if I'm quite honest. I think he's one of the more amazing characters in golf. And, obviously he's famous for his mishap at the Masters where he missigned his card.
Yes.
But I think, he's a huge favourite, and I think he deserves more airtime than he gets, to be honest. But, we've had some great winners, and it's really... It's a great course for finding the best player at that time. I know it sounds cheesy and stuff, but I think Hoylake has a way of identifying the top player.
So John Rahm it is, everybody. Get down to your Ladbrokes or your Paddy Power or whatever you'd like to do, and get a couple quid down. That's fantastic. So anyone who's listening who might actually be going this year. Now, any tips from a local? Where's the hang? Good luck, I guess, on finding a place to stay. Other places to play, because there are a lot of good ones in that area. Wallasey being one that I love very much. Isn't too far, is it? Wallasey, if I remember correctly.
No, Wallasey is very close. Wallasey would be about 4 miles.
Oh, yeah. All right. My memory's not all totally shot.
Wallasey is a fabulous place. It's
home
a fabulous
of
place
of Dr. Stableford, if you will.
That's it, Frank Stableford, the doctor, the good doctor who invented the format. Wallasey is close by and is not to be missed. I think sometimes Wallasey can be slightly overlooked because it sits in a tier that can be. Doesn't fit into this sort of premium bracket, which is unfair. I think if you play Wallasey, anybody who plays Wallasey never comes away disappointed. Just never. It's a really, really lovely site. The dunescape is tall. It's big, very dramatic. So I would recommend Wallasey massively to anybody. But also there's the famous coast is littered with wonderful golf courses. West Lancs, going north from Wallasey, if you have Hoylake and then Wallasey, if you go through across the Mersey River and then you get into Liverpool, you've got West Lancs and Formby, Southport and Ainsdale, Hillside and Birkdale, and then if you go a bit further north, things like St Anne's Old Links, closer to Blackpool, Lytham obviously everybody knows, and at Fairhaven. There are about 12 or 13 great courses along a very comparatively short stretch. So if you were to stay in somewhere like central Liverpool, you've got easy access to all of those courses within probably an hour's drive. It's a really remarkable stretch of coastline for golf. It really is.
Let's get over there. Let's see the Open. Let's play some golf. And if folks want to meet up with Joe McDonald, where are you going to be hanging? Where's your local? Where
would I hang?
Well, you're a member, so you'll be hanging at the bar inside. Do you have like a
of
member's
our
coat
Hoylake.
at Hoylake? Is there like a? Do you have to dress up that week, or how's that work?
No, I don't think we have to do anything, but I think there will be certain people who would be very glad to display the Hoylake regalia and
Sure.
that sort of thing. No, it doesn't work like that. But the clubhouse is in my opinion, I know I'm massively biased, but the clubhouse is one of the best in the game.
It is a good one. I got your back on that.
I mean, the course is inextricably linked with the club, the whole clubhouse, the history of the place. Everything that's gone before it. My friend Stephen Proctor wrote a book called The Long Golden Afternoon, which was released middle of last year, and it really does detail in a great way the value of Hoylake and what part it played in the sort of burgeoning game that was coming in England. You know, how it exploded, and what a prominent part Hoylake played as a club in the growth of the game as we know it today within UK and then transported to America. It really was unbelievable, and I think it's very easy to overlook just how prominent a part Hoylake played in that growth of the game that we know today.
Well, exciting. Yeah, it'll be no doubt about it, and very exciting. The Open going back, and if anyone does have the chance to visit and experience some of that history, it is. I was most impressed, even though, like I said, I'd like another couple cracks at the golf course, stepping into the history in the clubhouse there with the big clock and the whole thing. And it was just immediately, you felt like there's just a lot of presence throughout that building. The sort of ghosts of golf past. It's a wonderful place to visit. Are you a Liverpool fan? Is that your team?
I'm an Everton fan, and it's quite a difficult life to lead.
I was going to say,
yeah. Everton were quite a big thing when I was a kid. They had a flourish in the 80s, and we did very well. But things have gone slightly south since then, and it's been a labour of love supporting Everton ever since. It's quite easy to support Liverpool because they're quite good and have done very well. So should we not dwell on that because it's painful?
No, I didn't know I was bringing up such sensitive matter, but I had to ask who your team was, of course. Who our friend from Men in Blazers? My gosh, whose name is going to escape me. You're not the first Everton fan on the podcast.
While you search for that, I'm just going to come back to the point you mentioned earlier about my surname. So my dad and I both read your Ireland book, and we were both really taken by this harebrained scheme of walking. Yeah, we are. Yeah, exactly. One of those 100 million people.
Oh, yeah.
And we were really taken by this harebrained scheme of walking around the place. But also, my dad, his family. Well, I'm from a long lineage of Irish family, both sides, and my dad's mum's maiden name was McSpirit, which is a great name. And
that's an awesome name.
Yeah,
that is
my
such a cool
mum's
name.
mum was called Maluli, which is also a great
go.
name. There you go, Maluli and McSpirit, and my mum's maiden name was Maher. And my dad's side of the family came from not far from where yours are from. So the Belmullet region, not quite that far, but more like
Really?
Westport. Yeah.
That is awesome.
So we were really taken with your story. And my dad had been over loads of times to see his old family stomping ground, and there's an old abbey there that has a burial site. It's called Burrishool Abbey, and it was burnt down in the days of Henry VIII when there was the whole sort of burning of the monasteries, and there's an old graveyard that has stayed intact, and it's full of these gravestones they've got my surname on them, McDonnell. And you don't see McDonnell that often in England, and if you say to somebody, somebody says, "What's your surname?" you have to spell it for them. Whereas you go to Ireland, particularly west of Ireland, you don't have to spell it; you just say it, and they know how it's spelled.
McDonnell.
So it's really unusual. Yeah,
2 N's, 2 L's.
Exactly. Excellent. What else would it be? So you go over there and you see this lovely Burrishool Abbey, which sits on the edge of a lake, and it's this burnt down old monastery surrounded by these gravestones that are filled with McDonalds who our family lost. So my sister is her ashes are spread there, and my dad's first wife who died of the same thing that killed my sister. So it's a pretty amazing amazing backstory. And we went over there and we played Cairn off the back of your recommendation twice, and we thought it was the best course we've ever played. And I've played a lot of golf courses, so it really blew our heads off. We agreed with you entirely. The romance of the place, you know. And I'm an architecture geek. And you know, you can leave at the door where the bunkering is and all that sort of stuff. I'd fill in all the bunkers. It doesn't need any bunkers, but you know, the landscape itself is just extraordinary, and it is inseparable from its location. And it just blew us away. The pair of us, having played all over the world, it's just incredible.
Wow.
So we loved it, and thank you for that recommendation. It got us off our butts, and we got the ferry over. We drove right across the country. We played at Strand Hill down the road, which you played as well, didn't you?
Total
Strand
charmer.
Hill was wonderful.
Yeah,
real charmer. Sleeper. And County Sligo, Ross's Point, which was lovely. My dad, that was his old favourite. So,
good.
Thank you for the recommendation. Cairn left us speechless.
Thank you for the kind words. Thanks for reading the book and going to. That's my favorite trip is Cairn, Enniscrone, Ross's Point, Strand Hill. You know, just you can stay stay in Ballina. I like to stay at the Mount Falcon there, or you can stay out on Belmullet if you know there's great spots out there as well. That family connection is. I'm very sorry for your loss as well, and that family connection though is.
Oh no, it's a long time ago. Long time ago.
That's extraordinary, though, to be able to. And
do you know what's funny is there was a McDonald's bar. There's
where?
a McDonald's bar
in Belmullet?
In Belmullet. Yeah, there's a McDonald's bar, our surname, and then next door there's a McDonald's funeral parlour.
Well, did you pop in?
So, well, you know, we went into the bar and we said maybe
not the funeral
in a few
parlour.
years we'll
I hope
business, but yeah,
I hope the pub. Yes,
not just now, but. Yeah, but they've obviously got some sort of business going on. There's a bit of a handshake.
No, for sure. I know exactly where the funeral parlor is there. Last time I was there, one of the members had passed, and so all the members went over. And you know, if someone in Belmullet dies, I mean, talk about an Irish wake. You know, everyone knows. Everyone's going and just popping in and saying hello and connecting. Yeah. So wow, so we have something in common. We might even be related, Joe. Going back far enough. I mean,
could be
the family connection. Yeah, my family's from West Mayo, and that's was the initial draw to go play and bring my family out to Cairn in the Ireland book. So yes, indeed, a special place. But have you done any? Now, we haven't even gotten to your connection to the Golfers Journal yet.
No.
And maybe we should have started there. Let me tell everyone that it was Roger Bennett from Men in Blazers, who is the Everton fan and wrote the wonderful book Reborn in the USA, An Englishman's Love Letter to America, about his story as an Everton fan growing up he grew up in Liverpool, I believe, came to America, and does carry with him as well that something of that burden of being an Everton fan. But when they win, it's a great thing. And I as a Philadelphia fan, I know where you're coming from, and we've had some success of late, but it's all the sweeter. That success is all the sweeter when you get kicked around for so long. I mean, it's not like you're not going to be relegated this year, are you, or anything like that? Where are you in the tables?
That's been a couple of months.
I don't know.
Dire straits. I'm telling you, we're in big trouble. We were last year as well. Things have not improved. I think we should swiftly move on from this conversation. It's making me miserable.
Right. Well, let's finally get here to what we came to talk about. But no, it was great to catch up on Hoylake because obviously a big year for golf in the Liverpool area. But Joe, it's been wonderful. Our readers and our members will know your work. We're talking to the artist designer who's been doing beautiful work in our Yardage Book series. Yardage Book has been a part of the Golfers Journal from Golfers Journal 1. It's been one of our steady features where we do a deep dive on one golf hole, and our readers. It's been popular with our readers and something we hope to keep doing for a long time. And your work has been a new addition to it. How would you describe the art that you are creating? Because it's like I wouldn't call it a painting or a computer rendering. It's like somewhere in the middle. How do you describe it, and how do you do it?
it's. I hope I'm creating something that's a bit different, and that makes people look twice. Maybe it stops people scrolling or turning pages or whatever it might be because it's just a bit different. I have been studying and trying different methods for a long time. The way I got into working with 3D and 3D renderings of golf courses was sort of circuitous route that started with in the software business that I was working with a few years back. We were trying to create we did create a golf tracking system which allowed the user to see shots that were played in real time on the tour, and it would be very accurate, and you'd be able to explore a 2D and 3D model of the hole with great accuracy. There were various apps that have been doing this now for a few years, but actually this was a forerunner of those things. So I got really into it. I loved manipulating or working with the 3D data and trying to take real-world coordinates and translate them into a sort of app version of it, digital version. And part of that involved working with digital data, survey data. So I started to get my head around the survey data and started to get really into the landscapes of these things. And of course, links golf provides very interesting land, and I got a real taste for working with these links land, and particularly links land sort of shapes and contours of ground. And from that, I started working with really how do I sort of do something interesting with this ground in a way that doesn't necessarily try to do photorealistic like for like renderings of these holes, but more something that might make people look at it in a more artistic way, slightly looser, slightly more crazy. I mean, in the background here, I don't know, can you see? I'm still yet to put my pictures up in my new office, but I've always been working with watercolors and artwork for years. Since I was at school, it was always my passion. So I was like, how can I introduce something in a digital way that was loose and slightly more flairish than perhaps just doing trying to replicate photorealistic versions of holes. And I think I've arrived at a result or a style that is a bit different and stands out from what else is available on the market. Let's say, I don't want to call it a market, but let's say it is. So people can come along and look at that thing, and it might create an emotional feeling. Certainly something that makes their eyes tick around a bit and go, okay, this is a bit different, and just stands out from the crowd. I think I like to be a bit different. I'm afraid I'm one of those slight contrarians in certain ways, particularly in visuals. So that's what we do.
It's good to be different. It is. There are images that you pause on, you look at it, and you think, is that a photograph? Is that somehow coming off the page? Because there's a three-dimensional element to it. Is it a computer rendering? Is it a topo map? Is it, it's got all these interesting elements that really sort of make the land kind of pop and come to life. Give us a little insight into the process, because we've given you some tough assignments. I've been through your gallery, and you have a few courses where you'd say, oh, okay, maybe that would be a course where you would have access to a topography. It might be easier to find, something about the second hole at Dornoch or something, but we've given you sometimes the Yardage Book gets into some pretty obscure places where, I don't know, where are you finding the map? Like, where are you getting your source material to create these images?
It varies greatly. Some are, every single assignment, every single course has its own challenges. Some are based on the fact that there is almost zero topography data. There's no topological data for the hole. Others may have a very, very sketchy, rudimentary aerial image somewhere on, whether it's Google Earth or Bing Maps or whatever it might be, give you basic outlines of where the green and the fairway and tees and such might exist. And then you might get other stuff that's much more clear and ready and up to date. Take, for example, the upcoming issue will feature the one at Lake Merced, which is the 13th, the par 3, with the lovely restored Mackenzie bunkering. And that was a difficult one because whilst there was some topography available, some of that data was online. it was talking to a 2017 version of the landscape, which has been completely reconfigured by, the guys, Tommy Nakarato and Brett Hochstein and various others who worked on it. And it's very difficult to work with. So then photographs taken by great photographers. I mean, he goes by, what's his name, Golf Hawk. Lovely photos available online. And you guys, Golfers Journal had visited and posted some stuff online. So I had to go through all the photos to try and glean what I thought was the right sort of sculpting for the landscape and try and bring it into something that was coherent and looked like what exists today, but with my take on it, which was a slightly looser version than just like for like photos, because photos are photos, right? What? I mean, I'm not doing photos. You guys do photos. So yeah, that's a tricky one, and that was a tough assignment, really tough. But I have to always constantly keep in the back of my mind, what am I here for? What's the purpose? Why have these guys asked me to do this? It's not to take a photo. They've got guys who take photos, and they take wonderful photos. Why would I be trying to create another photo? I'm not doing that. I'm creating something which might stop people turning the page and go, oh crikey, what's that? And have a look closer. Have a look at the bunkering and of course I can manipulate the shadow in the model more than you can in perhaps a photo. So instead of having great sweeping shadows that come from trees, which are they're immovable, you can't take them out of your actual photo at 7 o'clock in the evening at golden hour. Whereas I can play with the lighting on the ground and start introducing shadowing that more dramatic than perhaps might be there. So instead of being bound by this is real, in inverted commas, and being bound by the realism of a photo, I can then start playing with contrast and light and shadow in a way that you can't get from a standard photograph.
It's remarkable. How do you find that balance between photograph and art? Like that, how do you strike that? That's got to be something, well, I guess that's the challenge, right? Is how much is it your impression and your artistic point of view? How much do you play with the shadows? How much do you play with what you with the tools at your disposal? And how much should be an accurate should be a literal rendering of the golf course? I guess that's the line that probably only the artist knows, right?
Yeah, true. I mean, if it is art that you're being asked to create, then I suppose the boundaries are, it's up to you, really, I suppose. But when it comes to the other type of work I do can be very technical. So in the work I do with the chaps at CDP, Clayton DeVries and Pont. So because I work with those guys, I'm their head of imagery now. I joined them recently at the start of this year in a official capacity. But if I'm doing work with those guys and they need a tech drawing, then absolutely it's got to be correct. So if I'm manipulating a landform, if I had to push and pull and sculpt a bunker or redo a green or something, then that has to be work within extreme parameters. It has to be correct. So the output would be, let's say, some contour lines, and those contour lines might be used either via the shaper, it might be Mike DeVries or whoever else, that take these contour lines and then work to those. It has to be exact. Whereas if you're working on something that's more emotional and visual, and the idea is to convey a feeling, then sure, the boundaries can be stretched, I think.
That's got to be pretty exciting working with Mike DeVries, also a veteran of the Golfers Journal podcast, and they're doing some pretty awesome stuff. I guess are they back from Tasmania yet?
Still going, I think. There's they're still visiting. Lucas Michelle is still there on a more regular basis, and obviously Mike Clayton living nearish by.
Have you done renderings
as near
for
as you can be.
7 Mile?
Not for 7 Mile. Not for 7 Mile. No.
Well, we'll be looking forward to those, though.
Tracking the progress with, great interest.
We all have.
I mean,
it does. It certainly does.
Phenomenal,
and I'd love to see what you'd be able to do with here. So you're essentially creating a model, like a computer model of a hole. Are you using the sort of same similar software to what architects use when they're creating their golf holes, or are you doing something different?
It's a good question. It depends on what they use. I think the industry standard, probably not what I use. I don't think I use probably a more artistic software than it is technical. Although what I use can be applied to very rigorous technical stuff as well if you use it in that fashion. But I think traditional AutoCAD would be your architect's go-to, and I think that produces very solid technical drawings and does what that needs to do. When you step out of something like AutoCAD into the various other options on the market, I would say it's more creative. I would say more creative. The 3D part of it is you want to step out of AutoCAD and use different stuff to do that sort of thing. I mean, I can't, without being immensely geeky and going really, really deep down a rabbit hole, I don't think your listeners want to hear about the heavy tech stuff, because it'll just leave everybody cold. But a couple of geeks, but small. They're in the minority. I won't get too deep on that stuff. But yeah, there's a variety of tools on the market which are great. I mean, there's loads of free tools. Blender is a free open source piece of software for 3D, which is amazingly powerful, very well supported, lovely community. People can answer any question you've got about Blender, any question. So if you're looking to get into the 3D world, Blender would be your intro, I would say, because it's just fantastic and free. But there are all sorts of tools out there that can get you to a certain point. But I think one of my least favorite questions on social media, for example, is when people ask me what software I use, because although nobody ever means any harm, everyone's in high spirits. When they ask you what software you've used to create something that you've posted, I think there's a slight insinuation that the software has done it for you. And it's just a question of learning, what plugins or what one-click solution can do this. And I think, whilst nobody means any harm, it's just annoying. I'm just like, yeah, man, it's like 5 pieces of software and it's taken freaking ages. So do you want me to really tell you what software? Because it's not going to be easy. And to be honest, I can't be answering that question. Yeah. So I don't want to sound like a horror show and be really arsey about it, but when somebody says, what software is this? You're like, I don't know, Microsoft Word, just F off.
Yeah. Hold on, Joe. Let me just
feel like that sometimes.
Give me a second while I just change my next question here. Hold on. Let me cross. Okay, on to the next one. No,
what software do you use?
I wasn't going to ask you what software you use, because frankly, I wouldn't know what the hell you're talking about.
Go on, bugger off.
I wouldn't even know. Yeah, I kind of know what PowerPoint is, but I wouldn't know what the hell you're talking about anyway. So, but that's a fair point, and that's
no one means any harm. You don't want to sound like an old stick in the mud, but you're like, oh, dude, you've asked me what software I'm using. It's like, can we not just talk about golf instead of like what software I'm using? It's like, let's talk about golf and the product rather than the blinking how, No,
I know. Well, it's like, I think for the writer, you get like, wow, how long did that take to write? As if like as long as if you just showed up. As if it was a job where, okay, every day I did 10,000 words a day, and I showed up for 15 days, and I produced the book.
Here's the source and the formula. Here's the formula.
How old am I? That's how many fucking years it took. So
exactly.
Looking at I've been looking at your work for for a while now, but since we've had to reschedule our conversation a couple times, I feel like I know it pretty intimately. What's been your favorite to work on?
Great.
And it's cool. I mean, this has to be fun as a golfer to be doing this, and now to be doing it in a really official capacity for an architect and a book like The Golfer's Journal. What have been your favorite projects, as long as we don't mention any that we haven't released yet, I guess, in The Golfer's Journal?
Well, okay, the answer is there are 2. I think I really enjoyed working on the one that's upcoming, the Lake Merced one, because that took some investigative.
Sounds like some
effort.
Real.
I had to go to
digging up for that one.
Yeah, there was some digging, there was some research. I had to look at a lot of photos. I had to jig things around, do a lot of sculpting. It was that was a tricky one, and I'm happy with the result, and I think it's pretty cool. And it does something other than, like I said, provide some form of photo alternative. It's much more a standalone piece of art that just looks different. My only I only lament the fact that you can only publish one picture in the journal, because excuse me, it is a model, and it can be the renders can be taken for various angles. And when I was discussing with your guys, your team, which angle to use, we decided on one which fitted the page layout best. But obviously, I'm sad that we couldn't do more, because seeing it from all the different angles and seeing the way the shadows work with the landscape in different ways, it would be lovely to be able to show more of that. But
let's make sure we get more for
double spread
when that comes out, and we'll blast it around our.
That's it, Tom. You put in a good word, and you say what Joe needs is an entire chapter, 5 pages solid of renders.
Let's just do it. But we'll do it. I noticed too that you do animations as well.
Yes.
So we need to be showing those when we're promoting. When the books come out, and we will take each feature. We'll focus on at different times via our platforms, and we got to make sure we're showing off some more of that, because those are very, very cool. The flyovers and stuff like that.
Yeah, the animation stuff. I came from a background in software where I was a motion designer. Motion graphics. Some of the stuff that I was doing before I went full time with the golf work was trying to show, just in my spare time, was trying to show evolutions of golf courses, where particularly the things that I love, like Hoylake and Golden Age historical courses, which have had quite a sizable change and evolution across the last 100 years, where you can show via some sort of morphing animation show where they were and where they are throughout the ages. And I think there's something about it, rather than just putting a photo with here's 1945 and here's 1965, having these things physically move in front of your eyes, where they morph between states, can really show you where, let's say, fairways or bunkers or whatever it has changed significantly. So it can be quite striking. And I like bringing what I was previously doing in a different life into the golf world. Excuse me. So trying to merge learnings in a different field and different discipline into the golf world, so you can bring something to the party that maybe hasn't been seen before. And I was really enjoying doing that sort of thing. And I hope that we can continue with CDP. We can continue to show stories. I think the story is the heart of it. And I know it can sound a bit kind of trite, but I think storytelling, when you're trying to get a point across to somebody, let's say you're trying to help somebody understand the benefit of let's say some sort of change of fairway mowing line, or a reshaping of a green, or some standard trees that needs taking out. If you can show them in a way that isn't just standing there and going, those need to go, or this needs changing here, or looking at an aerial map, which doesn't always talk to everybody. I mean, not everybody can look at an aerial map and understand what the hell you're talking about, because it's it's impenetrable to some people. Whereas if you can show them in a storytelling fashion, you can take them through the steps. You say, this is what we are today. The problem we have is X, Y, and Z. How about we do this? And what if we did this? And not just talk about it, but show it. So take them from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. And then, wouldn't it be brilliant if we had this? And then they go, oh my God, of course. And the penny drops and the light bulb goes off.
Yeah. I think it would be cool. I would love, if I was an architect, I would want your maps, like you to take a topo map and turn that into like a real thing. And then I'm just saying this because I'm not an architect and I can't read a topo map, but I think I could be an architect if you could create that landscape, and then you can because it feels like you can walk around like the whole property with your eyes, and sort of you could see so many different kinds of golf holes and different iterations, and it might make it would just maybe even along. We like golf courses where you don't have to move a ton of earth, or that's certainly something that's of the moment, but it's just more environmentally, it's just the way to go. If you don't have to recreate the landscape, why should you? And I just love what you create, because it really shows off the landscape, which is just really, really fun and really, really cool. I cut you off. What was another favorite project of yours? You mentioned Lake Merced.
Lake Merced, I have to go into something I've been working on with the chaps at CDP. Because it's close to home, is Wallasey. There are.
Hey, we were just talking about
proposals.
Wallasey.
We were. So Wallasey, some proposals have been made to the committees and the members. Still waiting for everybody to, I think, to digest. But yeah, working on that with a course so close to home, and I'm so familiar with. Grew up down the road. I played Wallasey countless times over the years. A chap called John McLaughlin joined there a couple of years ago. In fact, I think a year and a half ago. He's done great things. The course condition is off the charts. It's fantastic. But also there are the sentiment is, how can we get the very, very best out of the landscape we have? And as you know, having played it, the landscape there is, the potential is phenomenal. And there are some of the holes that I mean, when you dig into the history of the club, it's quite incredible, because they have been pushed and pulled so many times over the years, particularly during the World War II years, where the Ministry of Defence requisitioned a large parcel of the very best land on the course, and they took it and they stationed gun turrets, and it became a sort of an arsenal gun site. It's now called the Gun Site Dunes, which are council owned, and people walk their dogs and everything else on it, and it's no longer part of the course. But when that was part of the course, then there were some great holes and lovely stuff going on over there, but that was taken away from the club, and they were playing with 15 holes for a long time during wartime, up until the 50s, where they decided, right, enough's enough, we need to create another 18-hole routing. So things were changed, and it's evolved over the years greatly. But I firmly believe that there's more to be had from a site as great as Wallasey is, in a way that is slightly different from what they have now. And the guys at CDP, Frank Pont and Sam Cooper in particular, have been working away greatly on some incredibly good ideas, and I've been lucky enough to be able to work on the visualizations for those things and showing a sort of before and after proposition for the states of the course. So I've really enjoyed that. It's been wonderful looking at what I know so well and that I'm so familiar with, seeing the potential and what can be unearthed, particularly underneath what is now scrub and gorse and sort of bad trees. You take those away, and what lies beneath is fabulous linksland, which is just sitting there unused, sitting beneath gorse and scrub.
What a great tool for an architect, those renderings, to go in and win over a membership who's going to vote on whether to do this or not do this, or however it works at whatever club, where an architect is working, or win over an owner, etc. What a huge resource to be able to show them, okay, here's what's under the gorse, and here's what we can give you, and it looks like it's this beautiful thing. You can envision it as you could just like step into it and play golf. It's tremendous. Yeah. Now Wallasey really as well. We had mentioned some Bobby Jones history at Liverpool, and I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention some. If I recall, and I believe I wrote about this at some point, but the memory's not what it was. Well, didn't Bobby Jones qualify for something at Wallasey, and they have his picture there that I believe the only other copy is at the Augusta National? Bang.
Precisely. It was when you say copy, you got it right. So the copy is at Augusta National. I think they were so taken with the original, they wanted to buy it, and they offered some sort of blank check, which was turned down politely. So Wallasey has kept hold of the original. Bobby Jones in his quad year of 30, he qualified at Wallasey, loved Wallasey, talked very highly of it, and Augusta National had a I don't know if it's a replica, but yes, they have their version of it because they loved it so much.
It's the iconic one of him is it the one where he's in his backswing? That one?
No, it's him standing in a sort of regal landscape behind. Yeah. Yes, so that's proudly displayed in the dining area of Wallasey. They've got a hell of a history, Wallasey. I mean, really, it's a quite incredible story. Their history is worth picking up. It's readily available. I think you can get it on Amazon. But yeah, they almost didn't exist as a club. They started out in the early days, pre-1900, and they were victim of great blown sand. It was a very, very dynamic dune system. Open sand, lots and lots of blown sand, which used to regularly coat the entire town in sand blow. to the point where sometimes underpasses where, you go under the rail line or the road line would be filled with sand. So it was a problem for the town. So the mobile dune scape was a serious problem. But they set up a course and they gave it a go. And eventually, after much turmoil, they managed to, stabilise the dunes with planting of marram, sprigs, and various other grasses to hold it together and knit it. So, they managed to get a golf course going, and it stayed the test of time. And it's been through, as I say, all kinds of pushing and pulling and manipulation. They had a huge chunk of sand dune taken away in the post-World War II by a chap called Lord Leverhulme, who's a big landowner of the area, who set up the company called Unilever, who, it's another story, but he provided huge amounts of jobs for people post World War II who were destitute. They came home from the war with nothing. So he provided huge numbers of jobs for these people to create this promenade, which is now still exists today, down at New Brighton, which is just half a mile down the road from Wallasey Golf Course. So they took thousands of tons from Wallasey, the site, and what we now play as the 4th and 17th hole at Wallasey used to be some enormous dune, which is now a flat, man-made flat part of land. Which,
that is great. That is great history, and I love as you're describing there, how marram fescue comes in there, grass comes in and stabilizes these dune systems so that they're not blown away. So that the community can, function better, but function in conjunction with the natural setting. And so you don't have to, and so you also don't have to get rid of that dune system either. So, I mean, it just reminds me of some of the conversations I've had with like Dave McClay Kidd about Macrohannish dunes and how, there's this environmentalist sort of fighting golf development, especially in these sensitive ecosystems on links land. But how golf often is the thing that can give that land purpose, and by giving it purpose, it thus protects it. And by growing grass, and so those dune systems are still mobile, but they're not mobile in the way that they're going to be somewhere else tomorrow. They're going to be somewhere else in 100 years or 200 years, and that's an important characteristic of dune land, or of links land. But the fact that now, if we want to have a golf course here, let's grow some grass on it. And by and it'll be maintained, and the grass will be taken care of because it is a golf course. I mean, it's a great example of golf doing something really positive for the environment. I think in links golf, it does that. It does really. It protects our some of our most essential and fragile ecosystems, where if you don't protect them, they turn into blowouts and places for to party and places for farmers to dump stuff, which is what you see on dunes that aren't, which is what you see around the coast where there isn't a golf course sometimes. So in any event, that stuff is great. What inspires you as a designer? Where do you get, looking at just a really impressive collection of work here, do you get your inspiration from fine art? Do you get it from golf course architecture? What makes you want to create and gets you excited to work?
It's a combination, I guess, of genes. Both my parents come from a design art orientated background. My dad was a traditional architect, worked on housing and traditional architecture, infrastructure and things. My mum designed children's toys. So I'm a product, I guess, of that, and the upbringing that I've had is one of great creative, creative essence. We're a musical family. We've always played music. I had a spell in the music business for a bit. Didn't quite work out, but there we go. But we've always been a family that's up for playing songs and singing. Harmonising, and very sort of traditional Irish family, I would guess.
Yeah, I was going to say, that is Irish.
Very Irish, and we're up for that, and it's fun. And we've always got time for people who are willing to pick up an instrument or just sing or whatever it is and just do your bit, have a turn. Yeah. But yeah, that's the essence of it, I guess, the history of the product of where I come from. And I think the things that really tickle me on a daily basis and get me inspired, I would say, are a tenacity. I love following, whether it's, I mean, these days it's social media, but even before social media, I love following people's work. We at school were introduced to a local artist, to me now, a local Wirral, Merseyside artist called Graham Dean, who worked with watercolours in a way that was very wild. He used to, paint straight from the tube, extremely wet paper, where you would apply the watercolours onto the paper in puddles of water where it would bleed, and he would control the bleed of the watercolour in such a way that it's just incredible craft. I mean, for anybody who wants to see it, look him up, Graham Dean from Wirral, Birkenhead. And that really inspired me. Our art teacher at school got us really into that. So I was into a wild sort of painting from when I was 14. My older brother Tom really got me into that side of things, and we, I don't know, fairly competitive in a way. We'd push each other to see what we could do, things that weren't, while other people at school or our compadres were doing things that were obsessed with, like for like, sort of high quality portraits, or sort of pictorial, very real, like for like pictures of something like a still life or a scene. We were into pushing boundaries where you would try and be as wild as you could. I don't think we fully understood what Impressionism was, or any of the isms within art or creativity at the time, but what we felt was like, how can we do something a bit different? As I said at the start, we're contrarians really by nature. We like to push things and do things differently, and I always find joy in seeing things that stick out. I love stuff that sticks out from the norm, and when I see stuff that's the norm and a bit safe, I always slightly shrug and I think that's lovely, but not for me. I like stuff that's a bit different and a bit daring, and if it's so daring that some people see it as crap, then I think you're onto a good thing.
Well, there you go. I've been onto a good thing for a long time then. I've been making crap, creating crap for
as long as it's just some people who think it's crap and not everybody, Yeah, just some people. Make sure that yeah.
Very well said, though. I love it, and I'm so glad that you've become a part of the Golfers Journal, because I think we're very much, no pun intended, on the same page there. That if it is something that feels ordinary, or something that you would see in 100 other places, hopefully it's something we're probably not going to be interested in, and hopefully may those standards last, and hopefully you keep making awesome stuff for us. So, how did you do Durness? How did you end up at Durness? I just have to just
mutual friend
go,
Sam Cooper.
Oh, there you go. All right. That's fantastic.
There he is.
Because your list of just going through some of your gallery, Durness and Trey, and Brancaster, and we're at Hollandwell. I mean, I haven't played that much in Walton Heath. It's looked like I haven't played that much in England, but I have gotten to some of these beauties. Some of these are in Scotland as well. But you're wandering as a golfer, as a golf designer. You're also wandering the path less traveled here too, which is very, very cool.
The more I can get off the beaten track, the better. I feel like I have to go and see the courses that are considered the best. I have to go and see those, because if I don't, then what do I know? But going to see these wild courses up at Durness, I have to give a shout to friend Chris Stott, who we went up. He's a member of Dornoch Country member, and we travelled up there, and he said, now we can go up to Brora where we played already, or we can go to Golspie, or how about we go across the country to Durness? And I said, man, let's do it. Let's get in the car and go to Durness. So we went from the sort of Embo Sands right across to Durness, and I don't regret a second of it. Absolutely spellbinding place.
You went across instead of around?
Yeah, we went across.
Whoa.
Yeah, we went across and then around on the way back. So we did both versions of the trip.
Nice.
Yeah, we did the NC 500. It was extraordinary. We were greeted by bouncing deer, the stags next to us on the way up there. I mean, you've got to be careful because I think they jump into the cars sometimes. But we were lucky enough not to come to, knock any over. But the journey was just extraordinary, and getting there and playing that place is, to anybody who even considers going near that place and not playing it, you're mad. You've got to go.
Not too many people get near that place, folks. If you're not familiar, it is in the
not
far
near anyway, but
far northwestern corner of Scotland.
Yeah.
Even from Dornoch is quite a journey, but so cool. Joe, I can't thank you enough. This has been a blast, and we're really fortunate to have your work in the journal, and we're excited to see what you come up with next.
A few brewing, a few I've done that are waiting in the wings, and a few still to do. So
a few in the pipeline.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Joe. Be well.
Cheers, Tom. All right. Cheers, mate.